background. So let's try to bring this. Oh, okay. I think we're gonna have to try to sit in front of the glare, maybe. But the light, oh boy. I guess the light should be in front of me, true? Okay, let me try to fix this. Sorry about that. Um, unless I'm speaking so close, but I want to feel comfortable when I'm speaking. I might have to close that. Yeah, I'm gonna have to close that. Okay, let's see here. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Okay, that's probably better, true? Um, but then I don't want to hold it. I don't want to hold it. I am coming. I'm coming, guys. I so apologize about this. Okay, so I can't really fix the glare, but I hope that that is okay. And thank you for coming live. I am India. Because this is being recorded, I'm sure there are those who know who I am, and so they are inclined to listen and tune in and everything like this. But I guess, we are YouTube, so I am India Camille. I go by Chef India Camille. And this is YouTube, so there are probably new people who will be coming on since this is recorded. And I am a living foodist, and I've been a living foodist. I'm also a detox specialist, living life, not a style coach, and so on and so forth. We could I'll drop my website information, and then you can tune into that. And if you like what I'm saying, of course, you can hit the subscribe button and get notifications anytime I go live or anytime I post a new video, which hopefully will be more consistent. So today's topic is constipation. Now, feel free to tune in. To participate. Everyone, feel free to participate. If you have any questions or anything like that, just type it in the chat box. If you want to comment, just type it in the chat box, because this is the whole ideal of the live, is to interact with you, right? Okay. So today I wanted to speak about constipation. And it's interesting because I let's see, I have been conducting detoxes for some raw food and juice fasting detoxes for some 10, 11 years now, maybe 12 years, about with other people as well as myself. And I find that constipation is like always an issue. Like anytime anyone is dealing with any level, of dysfunction, um, of dis-ease, your body is not at a state of ease, um, it usually is rooted in constipation. Most people who come and see me to do a detox are constipated, and a lot of people don't even recognize that they're constipated. I mean, with YouTube and everything like that, and Google, there's more information out there about constipation and what consists of constipation. But still, yet, I find that maybe most people still are constipated. So, first, let's define constipation. Constipation, uh, from from my standpoint, right, is anytime you do not release after you consume. So if you're consuming 5 times for the day, you should be having 5 bowel movements. If you consume 3 times for the day, you should be having 3 bowel movements. If you consume 1 time for the day, 1 bowel movement for the day would be okay. You understand? So, uh, and constipation is rooted in dehydration. So we have to just point that out right away, right? So any kind of issues with constipation usually can be alleviated over time with one getting hydrated, which is also a process. It's not just a matter of, oh, I'm gonna drink all this water, oh, I'm gonna hurry up and, no, the system it takes time for the system to get hydrated. So that's another topic. But usually constipation is rooted in dehydration, right? And yeah, so if we think about how many times we eat and then how many times we're doing number two, and I mean a full release. I'm not speaking about like, oh, you kind of go, you get a little this, you get a little that, but I mean a full release. Then you're constipated technically. And usually when I share that with ones and ones who I work with, especially in Belize, in the States it's a little different because the exposure is a little different. Ones and ones in the States have access to different educational information on constipation, right? But my work in Belize with clients in Belize, ones and ones are always, when I say, well, are you, do you use the restroom? Number two, how often? And then they said, well, once a day, they'll use the restroom once a day. And I find that, and then they say, okay, I said, well, how many times do you eat? Oh, 3, 4 times for the day. Oh, well, you are constipated. Okay. Because every meal that you eat has to go through a process of breaking down and then, going into the small intestine, into the large intestine. Finally, when it finally reaches the large intestine, which should be somewhere between 8 and 12 hours later, right? By that time, think of how many meals that you've had between 8 and 12 hours, and then think of how many times you've actually used the restroom and released. So the system, the system is not designed to be constipated, one. And our whole so that's the definition of constipation. That's how I define constipation, right? So even as a living foodist, you can go through being constipated. Maybe you're eating very dense foods. Even as a vegan or person who's plant-based, you can go through being constipated as well. Just as far as in the moment of being like in that moment you are constipated, right? Now, there, because of the way that most people have been consuming since childhood, there is backup from a long, 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 long time ago. Not just the consumption, but also the different chemicals, the different antibiotics, especially if you're living in the States, In Belize, or countries like Belize, most women breastfeed. I mean, because it's, it's inexpensive. You understand? That formula is mad expensive here. And I believe it's expensive in the States, but it's, they accommodate people to get that formula, right? So because of that, you're dealing with a more sterilized environment, so a lot of times the digestive system, not to mention the stress, and not to mention, we could go even deeper, and we will get deeper, because those are just the peripheral understanding and overstanding of constipation. Those are just one aspects of it, right? The basic definition. And then you have different types of constipation. You have constipation that's immediate constipation, meaning that within the last few days you've consumed something that is not processing properly through the system. It's moving slow, it's rotting, because that is part of constipation as well. It's rotting food matter in the system because it's not moving and being processed in the timely manner that it should, so it ferments, so it rots, right? So there's many aspects to constipation, right? But then you also have like constipation where from time, from childhood, you may have dealt with digestive issues and may not have been aware. May have dealt with constipation, may not have been aware. Your parents may not have been aware. Your caregivers may not have been aware, depending on how you grew up, depending on, and if you are of a certain social economic uh, positioning or come from that background, then you may have been exposed to being in foster care. You'd be exposed to all kind of stress and trauma and things like that, right? So these things definitely cause constipation in the system, right? Just chemicals, right? And it's backed up. So a lot of times people they change their consumption. They stop eating meat. They stop eating all of that stuff. And they like, yo, I'm on a straight, narrow path. Like, I'm feeling so good, but I don't understand why I'm still not using the restroom like all the time. One, or they're not maybe understanding like why, like if they're going on detoxes, like that there's still waste in there. There's a lot of waste in there, right? It's just like impacted if we just think about that, right? And then we add to the fact that most 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 people started eating before the age of 2. Like most of us, if we were breastfed, we're probably not breastfed up into the age of 2. And the mother's breast, it actually has a healthy bacteria that is only found on that tit, right? It's only found there, and that helps to bring the healthy balance of digestion to the gut from a child. From so if we're not being breastfed, one, we are already at a disposition. So you have to know you're at a disposition to be constipated, especially if you are not consuming the foods that are water foods and foods that are high in fiber. And I don't mean like because a lot of people go on these psyllium husk cleanse and stuff like that. Like that, those are very abrasive to the system. We're just talking about simple adjustments to your living life, not a style that that is attainable and doable, and making adjustments to that, right? So there are different kinds of constipation, right? So you can have years of constipation and have changed your consumption, been a vegan for 5 years, and you still got waste backed up, baby. Like always, like there's waste backed up always. There's waste up in there, right? The mucus lining of the intestine renews itself every 3 days, right? So you may find that like your constipation may last 3 days if you change your consumption like within that time period, right? It takes time for that to be released, and so yes. Okay, now you have constipation. We're just speaking about constipation of the bowel, right? Of the bowel. And but the constipation of the bowel, now we're going to go deeper, right? The constipation of the bowel actually constipates the entire system. Okay, so this is why, like, when you see some ones and ones who are very constipated, or even if you see it in yourself, then you know what those symptoms are. You be very puffy, right? Like you're very like inflamed, right? Like so your body is retaining water, right? There are many different dynamics to that. Like there are many different dynamics to how the large intestine reabsorbs water, and because water plays a big role in how you actually are able to defecate. Not, the small intestine deals with processing the foods to get ready to distribute that, those foods. And then the large intestine deals with being able to take that matter that has not been used and bring it out as feces, right? And if you're dehydrated, it's very difficult for it to do that. So, but beyond that, like the where was I at? Where was I at? Okay, the what? What was? Uh huh. Well, I, where was I at, love?
With the water and the feces flushing out the system.
Oh, every 3 days. I was speaking about the lining every 3 days, right?
Yes.
So yeah, so there is constipation of the system. So that's what I was saying. So the constipation of the system now, you're dealing with constipation of the organs, you're dealing with constipation of the blood flow, you're dealing with constipation of, pretty much every mechanism in the human structure, right? So this is why a lot of times when we are constipated, on any level, we're very irritated. We're also on edge. We can be emotional. And this is also why, us feminine, when we're on our time, we actually, a lot of us report having to use the restroom more. So, and that usually is because the body is just pushing out waste, trying to push out whatever has been stored, right? And unfortunately, a lot of us are storing a lot of waste. And so that waste has to come out during that time, and it causes a lot of pain and a lot of, you know, uh, constipation of the system, constipation of the thoughts. But that is just the physical level. That's just the physical level. Okay. Um, Now, the physical level, it is tied to your mental energy, right? To your mental frequency. It's tied to your thoughts. It's also tied to your emotional body. Especially if we have been really brought up in the West, because the West really concentrates on emotions, on concentrating on one's emotional body and manipulating the emotional body. And this is why a lot of people, have, they don't know how to deal with emotions, especially when now that we're cleansing, right? Because we're coming into an age where cleansing is just, it's the way to be. It's not going to be something that's a novelty or that you have to seek. It's going to be something that more and more ones and ones are going to get the information that they need to continue their cleansing journey, because this is a collective energy on a spiritual plane, right? So the physical is connected through, your meridians, which are connected to your chakras, which are connected to, your different and by the way, you have chakras all over your body. Like, your whole body is a chakra system, basically, right? So when people, these are the seven centers that we, focus on, that, a lot of Western uh, teaching focuses on, but it is connected, right? So when your physical goody is constipated, your energy, you could bet your energy channels are constipated, okay? Your emotional body is constipated, right? And the thing is the reason why ones and ones are like being called to wake up and make these changes, because really, like, we don't have any more time to waste in any of our lives. Like, now that we're waking up, we're realizing the truth about life. We're realizing the truth about generational curses. We're realizing the truth about, who we are, who you are, and whatever purpose that you're designed to come here to fulfill, you're waking up to that. So it's like we're coming out of certain patterns, right? And it's on on the deeper level, it's a cleansing of the spiritual energy that's on the whole entire planet. It's on the whole entire planet, right? So if you're being called to make these changes, it's all connected. And the thing is it affects one's spiritual energy, because usually when they start to decompress all of that stored waste, which is attached to cellular memory, if it's stored, that means that, okay, like, anytime you sit down and you consume anything, you're consuming, usually people are, well, I try not to speak when I eat, but usually people are consuming, and talking, they're consuming what people are speaking about, they're consuming, so you're consuming all kind of things. So you have to, usually, when they're detoxing on that physical structure, they're also going to be detoxing on that emotional level, and definitely on the mental level, because it's all intertwined. But the emotional body is so important, because it's highly attached to the astral body, and the astral body is expressed through the solar plexus, right? So this is why when people go on fast, you start dreaming, you start, people report astral traveling and stuff like that, because now all of that constipation that was blocking up the flow of energy, because we are energy first. That's what we are first. All of that energy flow, all of that constipation, also because we're drinking our water, right? We're drinking nice water, we're praying over our water, we're bringing consciousness to the water body crystal that we are, and we're activating it by declogging it, right? All of that movement starts going, right? Starts moving, starts getting activated. And so consequently, you feel elevated, you feel purposeful, you feel that, you know what your path is, you're contented and you're at peace, right? And I think that that is also in an impermanent state, because life is life, and we all are coming from a toxic state. Like, most of us, 99.99% of us, have been filled with toxic thoughts, toxic emotional patterns, toxic, and have been literally fed it in our mouths, and it has gotten stuck in our systems, right? And then as we become adults and start making our own decisions, uh, we still have a whole slate of things that we have to clear and clean and everything like that. So changing the consumption is just the beginning to breaking the constipation. But the constipation usually will exist on less gross, dense levels, and that usually exists first because the physical manifestation of the constipation is the crystallization of all of that unseen energy. Right? So, yeah, the constipation is a serious thing. Constipation is a serious thing. And constipation can last years. I'm going to tell you a story. Okay. When I started on my journey, I had been vegetarian for about 3.5 years. And at this point, I have been 90% raw. I still had like a little beans and tortilla. I told myself at that time, like once a week, I could I could have beans and corn tortilla. I was living in Belize, and that was my comfort food at the time. I was living all the way in PG, and PG is like, if you've ever been to PG, PG is like stepping back in time for real, for real, for real. Like Belize is like stepping back in time for real, but PG is like stepping back in time for real, for real, for real. Right? So I was living out there, and I was getting into taking a lot of herbs from Tahuti Ma'ara, and I was also selling some of those herbs at the time because they were so good and did me so well. I felt I wanted to share with Belizean people, right? Um, so yeah, so I was 90% at the time. Now, then I had, and this was for like 2.5 years. Then I traveled and met up with Dr. Iris Latham. This is when I started my understudy with him, and he was fasting, and he said, I am not going to eat anything while I'm here. And I thought that was so revolutionary, right? Because I was like, you're not going to eat nothing, because even though was a living foodist, first of all, at that time, it used to take me forever to create foods. Like I had really very, very little understanding of how to mix foods, combine foods, and how to really get at the texture and even equipment. Like I have very limited understanding, but I was still rocking with it. I drank a lot of shakes. I drank a lot of shakes back then. But anyhow, he said he's going to do a fast, and I mention him in this story because I think it's very important to be able to have a facilitator to go through the process to have an understanding, right? And I'm going to tell you why. So I said, well, I'm going to fast too. I'm not going to miss this opportunity. I'm going to do what this man does, because he's the master. So I should do what he does. So I was like, well, I'm on it, right? So 6 days into the fast, first of all, like between day 4 and it was a juice fast, and I was drinking copious amounts of juice because I didn't have to make any juice. It was like all made, and I was drinking so much juice. It was crazy. So but I was still on it, and I did not cheat. But on like day 5, I started having the most craziest emotional breakdown. It was crazy. When I think back about it, I have a picture after I released the waste, and I'm going to tell you about the waste, right? So when I had a history of dealing with constipation from since I knew myself, like as a child, I can remember being constipated, not using the restroom properly, and then as an adult, I had outpatient surgery to remove a portion of my rectum because I was always constipated, and that's what they told me I should do. And the laxatives were not working, but it gets really deep, like. But so I knew, like, as I knew myself, I knew I was constipated all the time, right? And so, but when I changed my consumption, when I became plant based, that lessened. But then when I became all live, that pretty much was eliminated, right? Like immediately, like I started using restroom, like, oh, cool, like everything's cool, especially because I was doing a lot of herbal cleanses as well, right? So then when I hit New York and I started this juice fast, all of a sudden I was constipated. And I was like, why am I constipated? Like, I'm drinking all this juice. Like, I don't understand. Like, I've been raw vegan 90%. Like, I've been vegan. I've been taking these herbs. Like, what's going on? Like, I don't, first of all, maybe you, Dr. Iris, maybe you don't know what you're talking about. Like, maybe you, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not really trusting the process right now. Like, I'm trying, but I'm put some faith in it because I'm here and I just got, so I remember taking all kind of, and I didn't want to take a laxative because laxative changes the way that your body naturally responds. So really, from my standpoint, a laxative should only be taken for emergency purposes. From my standpoint, right? So anyhow, like on day, I was taking wheatgrass to try to break the constipation. Day 5 passed, still no bowel movement, and like we're trucking around New York, like dragging all kind of equipment everywhere, doing workshops, and I am so constipated. And I just remember on day 6, I had had enough. I broke down. I could not do the workshop anymore. I had to go into a safe space. I was questioning my whole life. I was like, I'm, an understudy and I'm constipated. This can't be right. Like all of these things. But let me tell you something. It was actually, that was day 5. On day 6, because it was day 6, I will never forget it. On day 6, I woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta go to the bathroom. Like it was pressing. But it was when I went to the restroom, and this may be a little graphic for some people, but I think it's important to share it because, it gives you a perspective of my own journey, so it can give you a perspective of your own journey as well, right? So on day 6, I woke up and I had to use the restroom. And I tell you, I had to push. I haven't had children yet, right? That is coming. Give thanks. I had to push and I had to push and I had to push. And the waste that dropped out of me was hard. It was like a brick. It was shaped like an L. It was this thick, shaped like an L, just like this. Just imagine the L, the L part right there. And it was black like this. It was black. Black, 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 black. And it had worms laced in between it. Uh-huh. Real talk. And make I tell you this, when I dropped that waist, it was like I went to a whole different existence, like a whole different plane. Like I've never returned back to that level of emotional being that I was, of unclarity that I was rolling with at the time, of just self, just things that needed to be healed from myself. So it was very interesting because I think I've always been doing the emotional work, growing up. For some of you that don't know, uh, my background, like growing up in foster care, growing up in abandoned situations, you know, it was it it my emotional being has always been mostly impacted. Like physically, I had always been a physically active person, but my emotional being and my mental being had not always been stable. And especially with the different traumas that I had gone through in childhood and in early adolescence and even adolescence, right? So a lot of times, a lot of us are coming with a lot of different trauma, and that trauma is has us, overly working that emotional body in ways that are, that age us, right? In ways that age us. And so when that physical waste dropped, because I had already been doing a lot of different, work with myself, with my mental energy and everything, it was like I just elevated and skyrocketed. And I should show a picture. I should have showed a picture of of that day, because I took a picture right after I dropped that waste, and the light that I was filled with, it was just amazing, right? And from there, I just started fasting more and more to break different levels of constipation. So, and I was using the restroom every time, all the time, So on the immediate level, I wasn't immediately constipated, but I was constipated in the sense that I had backed up waste that had crystallized, that had not left my system yet, which is most of us. Right? Unless you're like some monk or something like that, and you only have drinking water, never grew up in a way, never ate meat, never did no. But most of us are coming out of that whole being because it's a different time on Mother Earth right now, right? Which is another topic for another day. But yeah, so if you have any questions, like please feel free to ask it. We're at 30, 33, 30, 34 now. Um, yeah, constipation is a real thing. Constipation is a real thing. So if you're doing fasting, just know that you will get to different layers of waste that you break that constipation. And we have to learn what tools to use to actually help us break the constipation on the emotional plane as well as on the mental plane. Meditation definitely works, but these are things that have to become us, not things that we do. You understand what I'm saying? Because things that we do, we're just mitigating our life as a style instead of our life not as a style, if that makes any sense, right? Everything is very serious. So when you start doing this work and get decongested and deconstipated, then you will start to receive information from the ethers, like on a different level of what your purpose is to be fulfilled right now. How to move, your intuition, all of those things, your activation in general, your activation in general. Like, we are coming to know who we are, but you have to get deconstipated to do it. Right? Yeah. Like, we have to get deconstipated to do it, So that's why everything is a process. Some things that I would recommend for like immediate constipation, if you're dealing with that, is well, it depends. It depends on the kind of constipation. But if you are like just like dealing with an emergency and you just really need to break that, then there's a tea called Smooth Move. It's very gentle. It is a laxative herb. I think it's made from senna. So it can, like I said, and the thing with taking laxatives to break constipation is what happens is it kind of tricks the intestine to go into peristalsis, which is the involuntary movement that the intestine has. Anytime you eat something, the enzymes in the food cause contraction. If you have enzymes in your food, right, cause contractions of the of the small intestine, right, and it helps to process. And well, the whole intestinal structure, it moves, it causes contractions. You hear the parrots, oh, they're so beautiful. Yeah, they like to make noise and they like to eat up the fruits off of people's trees too. So, yes, it causes peristalsis. So the enzymes in the food, as well as if you're drinking water, but the tea causes that. It tricks the body to do that. So then, when it comes time to normalize your system into a regular bowel movement, it becomes difficult to do that. Like, you actually have to go through a period where you probably won't use the restroom at least for a day or two normally, right after you take a laxative. So if you do take a laxative, it's definitely not something you should take every day. So if you're taking it every day, there's a serious, 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 serious problem, and eventually the goodie could actually lose its ability to naturally go into that, or it will be harder and harder and harder to return back to the natural state of release, right? So also, I would say, like, let's say if you're a living foodist and you're like, okay, are you high live, or are you plant-based, and are you not, and you're trying to transition, and are seeing, like, eat a lot of nuts and stuff like that. If denser foods make you constipated, then you can always add sea moss to, like, your cheeses. You can add sea moss to your sauces. You could take sea moss in general, but like with your food, I find it to be very relaxing on the digestive system, because it's relaxing on my digestive system. So anytime I have cashew, I like to mix it with sea moss, so that, like, one, it grows it and it makes enough of the cheese that I want, right? and it makes it thicker, but it also eases the digestion, right? So it's not as painful going through my system. Okay, so and then make sure you are drinking your water. I think that that's like number one, number one, number one, number one. Speaking of, let me drink some water. Okay, so yeah, are there any questions? Like I don't know how to speak on YouTube. Like I think I'm speaking like a teacher or something like that. But like that's how I speak about these things. Like even to my husband, he just sits and he just listens to me. Cuz I have all of these thoughts, right? And the thing is a lot of times people will look also at others and they will say like, "Oh, like, she looks so happy. There are times where my system is going through a constipation and I have to release that constipation. And the 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 happiness and the joy comes from continuing and continuing and continuing and continuing and continuing and continuing. You get the drift, right? Wome says, I know cooked okra helps with constipation. What about raw okra? Yeah, I mean, I like raw okra. I prefer raw okra over cooked okra. So I haven't eaten a lot of raw okra. I'll be real with you, but but I like raw okra in my salads. I find that it is particularly good for the feminine, right? Because listen to them. They just like making noise. I love them. Listen to them. And they're big ones too. They're big green ones. And parrots, parrots actually mate for life. If you didn't know that, but yeah. So usually when you see one, you'll see two, and there's probably like 6 or 8 of them or something like that. So, anyways, um, you had said, what did Wome say? Oh, sorry, Wome. I had lost.
Okra.
Oh, the okra. Yeah. So I haven't eaten a lot of okra. As far as cooked okra, but raw, I like it in my salads, and it does help. But it is good for the feminine, and if you cut it open, oh, somebody said something. Okay, I don't want to lose it. I'm gonna come to that. If you open it, it looks like the ovaries, right? It has little eggs like the ovaries. Oh, where did the comments go? Okay, like I'm trying to let me bear with me 1 second. Let me see. Okay, there we go. So let me see about the comments. Oh, I am trying to do these comments. Does anybody know how I do this? It's terrible. It's terrible. Come on. Let me see. Okay. Oh, okay, good. All right, I got it now. All right, so listen to them. Okay, so yes, I hope that answers about okra. Did someone ask, did I did I lose the weight when I went live? I've been live for 110 days and have shed so much weight. It still and have shed so much weight. It still hasn't. I don't know why it keeps disappearing. It still hasn't come back yet, but has it hit a plateau? So how this works is usually the goodie will adjust naturally. Like when you change over to all live, the goodie will just go naturally to the weight that it is supposed to be, right? So a lot of times people will be like, man, I shed a lot of weight, and they get a little worried because they think it's going to continue, but it doesn't continue. It just goes naturally to whatever weight you are naturally inclined to be. That's why, a lot of times people be like, well, can raw foodists become weight builders, or can raw foodists, like, can they have, it's not really about that. Like, we do want to stay strong. It's not really about like the body image per se, uh, but the goodie does stop losing weight. So I don't want, it just goes to its natural state. Like usually my weight never really fluctuates unless I'm fasting. Okay. Next question. Thank y'all so much for engaging. I love it. Do you think people that work on a standing position can develop constipation? Um, Well, if you're standing and you're sedentary, it is pressure. It is pressure, right? Um, But then when you look at it on even a deeper level, right? Are you doing your purposes, right? Like that's really what, like, I don't want to like make it like everybody should just, move to the jungle and stuff like that. That's definitely for ones and ones, are not, right? But when it comes to like, even that conception of having a job that you have to stand on your feet all day, for someone else's vision, and if it's not in alignment, most people are working jobs that are not in alignment with their spirit, you understand, and what their purpose is. And I understand, I've worked many jobs, trust me, being independent and having, a really go-to attitude with life in general from a young age, and being a survivor, I've always worked, like I had always been employed before I started being self-employed. But just that whole shift right there, right, like, can cause stress in the system, right? That can cause constipation just by itself. Like, you are very sensitive in your solar plexus. You actually receive the information from others through your solar plexus. So a lot of times, like, people will be like fasting. Let's say like they have a family, or they have a mate or a husband or a wife, right? And they're fasting and they're breaking that constipation and breaking that constipation, and then they get agitated or they get hurt or something upsets them emotionally. They feel like they have to eat because that energy is absorbed and it's released through the solar plexus, right? So, so like standing up, just in general, having a job that you stand up on, like, man, we are here a very limited time on this planet, very limited time, and we are more powerful than what we think we are. So, like, we don't have to be standing on our feet for 10 hours working for someone else's vision and causing that kind of stress on the goodie, right? So definitely any kind of sedentary positioning will do that. And then Indigo Lynn, that was Alessi Borges, by the way. Greetings, Alessi. And then Indigo Lynn says, um, uh, can't listen as I'm out right now, but I can't wait to catch up on later. So happy to see you, girl. Blessed love. Ross One says blessed. And then we have Andrew Diaz. He says, when detoxing by fasting, what fruits and vegetables do you recommend to start with, especially here in Belize? Um, when detoxing through fasting, so it depends on the kind of fast that you're talking about. Are you speaking about a fruit fast? If you're speaking, are you speaking about a dry fast? Are you speaking about a water fast? Are you speaking about a juice fast? Are you speaking about a fasting from animal products? There are many different aspects to that. Um, yeah, uh, high water fruits are always going to be good to detox in general because they contain a lot of water, and water is the electric energy that is needed to actually cleanse uh, the cells. Prolonged juice feast, to be specific. Well, when you're doing a prolonged juice feast, it just gets really different, right? Because the goodie will require other nutrients, especially minerals. I find going into a longer fast, but it depends. It also depends on the spiritual energy, right? So if, for example, I did a 21-day water fast, and for the most part, I had just um, what was it? Water that had been purified, right? Reverse osmosis. I had reverse osmosis water for 21 days. There were days within that I had coconut water, right? And I never thought I could ever do that. So, but it was on a spiritual level, and also on a physical level, my system was able, after so many years of doing prolonged juice fasting, that I was able to do this water fast, right? So when you're doing a juice fast for a prolonged period of time, your goodie may require different things. So it's difficult. Speaking of juice, I'm gonna have my peach pineapple juice right here, right? Mm, your goodie may require different things um, to have. Like it may require something that's more salty, so you may need to use more celery. Or if you know, it may require, because of those minerals, right? The longer you fast, the more you're going to be really, really lacking minerals, especially if you're not doing mostly green juices and you're doing mostly fruit juices, right? Because our fruits are our breakers. So our fruits, even in juice form, are going to be the ones that contain the enzymes to really break down the system, while the greens help to stabilize the system, right? Remember, the greens don't have a lot of water and they're very concentrated. And what the greens do in particular is the greens actually help to release waste from the system in an expedited fashion through the cellular body because of the oxygen, right? And it's solar. It's like direct solar energy. That's how we consume our solar energy. So it can be a denser, you know, cleanser than the fruit juices. But sometimes when you go into longer fast, you're like, I don't want nothing sweet. I don't want no more fruit juice, please. You know, so that's really like a personal thing, or something that you would. It's definitely an individual thing, and I think it's something that you would want to, you know, observe and note. And if you are, you know, if you have the expertise, then you could do it yourself. And if you don't, then you would seek someone that would have the expertise of what to juice to get certain minerals and stuff at that level that you're at. Because it's difficult for me to tell you that, because you know you're not there yet, right? So like when I did the prolonged fast, I found that I required first time I did a prolonged juice fast, I found that I required, and we're talking about 21 days and up, I found that I required less sugary juices and more, you know, vegetable juices. And then the days that I was really, really hungry and really waist was really on the move, and like all I could think about was food, I would require more fruit juices. And that was probably so that the waist could break faster, right? Get to move. Because remember, those fruit juices contain more water as well, right? So, but then when I started getting more into water and the science of water and the science of our water bodies, and started drinking more water even while fasting, like instead of juices, I found that juices was like a meal. It felt like having a meal while I was fasting. So it just depends. I hope that answers your question. I'm going to move on to the next question. So delighted seeing you, and pray all is well. Been blesstastically great with you and the family. Yes, blessed love. In blessed love, sis, our brother. In conclusion, what fasting do you recommend to start with the journey of healing from detoxing away from food that society has us to know? I would probably say, and that's Andrew Diaz again, I would say definitely a raw food consumption. Uh, what fasting? You know, it depends. Again, like it really depends, because some people are so full of waste that really doing a fruit feast or a fruit fast is very, very highly beneficial for them, right? And some people don't have as much waste, but you know, really need, they may have like more serious issues, right? Like, and they're ready to do a juice fast. Like, so it depends. Like, I've done all of them, right? I've done dry fasting as well. And I would say that, you know, you want to start by breaking, however it is that you do, whatever you choose, you definitely want to break a lot of that waste before you shut down the digestive system. So, you know, if I was detoxing someone who was highly, highly toxic, I would say definitely put them on a regimen of, fruit eating, and then after that, high hydration and salads and raw food. And then from there, slowly bring them into fasting, right? Um, yeah. So I think that is all we're going to talk about right now, about constipation. There was one more note I wanted to make. It's getting dark here, and we're going to turn it in for the evening. If no one else has any questions, I hope that answers your question. Um, mm, mm, yeah, yeah. And when I do plans for people, I'm not trying to be like evasive either, because some people try to be evasive. So I'm not trying to be evasive, but everybody is really different. Like up to a certain point, you could do a standardized juice detox, but after a certain period of time, like when you're getting into like 21 days and over, those things really have to be specific to that individual, right? And even if you're doing water fasting, like you would want to do a supervised, and the assistance and facilitation would be it would be individualized for that individual as well, right? So, mm, I hope that covers some things about constipation. Increase that water intake, increase those electric foods, get the water on the move in your crystal body. Eat your fruits. Why so much urine when you're doing fasting or eating lots of fruits? Because your body is flushing. Your body's flushing. It got to get out that waste. You know what I'm saying? So you're first of all, when you're fasting, you're probably drinking more liquid than you usually drink, right? For most people. And then also, you and you are that liquid now is collecting a lot of that crystallized waste, which comes out in like your bodily salts and stuff like that, your bodily fluids, your urine, number one. And if you don't urinate on time, to timing, your body could actually reabsorb those toxins. So all I have to say is when you do start urinating so much is give thanks that that stuff is coming out of you. And sometimes it's so interesting because as you get more and more sensitive and you're urinating while you're detoxing, it's like a super release. It's like, that felt so good when you get that stuff out of you. So that's why you're urinating a lot. So the less toxic the body is, the less urination the system, will have to do during that time. Even though you're still drinking a lot, so you're still filtering. So, you know, um, I don't actually urinate often, which is very interesting. Like anyone who knows me will be like, I don't know. Like my husband is always like, I don't know how you could drink that level of water at that level, and But when I do go to the restroom, number one, like I'm like Austin Powers. It's a long, 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 long pee. Right. All right. So we're out of here. Definitely, if you found this video uh, helpful, we are in a jungle. We are on solar, and we gotta check out. Definitely subscribe, hit the like button, hit the share button. Also, just look out for some new content that's coming your way because Judah and I are gonna be presenting some really cool show, and we're gonna bring it to YouTube. Got the book on water by Dr. Batman on your recommendations. Gonna start reading. I'm telling you, that book will change your life. That book will change your life. Trust me, that book will change your life, for real. Because you'll be like, yo, I thought I had allergies. No, you're just dehydrated. Yo, I thought I was constipated. No, yeah, you're constipated. Yeah, you're dehydrated. Like, dehydration is for real. And usually, like I said, ones who are constipated are usually always dehydrated. So try to get that gallon in. Try to, there was one other thing I wanted to mention about constipation, which is very important, and we're gonna do it before the 60-minute mark. Is that the hours that your body is trying to eliminate naturally on its own is from 4 a.m. to 12 p.m. every single day. So, these people, these new age people came with this whole intermittent fasting and was like, oh, and people are all like, but the whole reason why this cycle works is because the goody is naturally trying to eliminate during that time because that is the time that the earth is on its elimination cycle as well, so we are, it's called the circadian cycles. So between the hours of 4 a.m. and 12 p.m. every single day, the goody is trying to release. If you wake up and you are consuming dense foods, let's say you're a raw foodist and you're eating cashews, let's say you're a vegetarian and you're eating some, like mock, egg McMuffin sandwiches. Let's say you're not and you're not vegan and you're eating, egg and pancakes for breakfast, right? Or let's say you're even like, you're like hardcore, workout person in the morning. You got this really dense protein shake that got like oatmeal and bananas and raisins and dates, because you know there are those ones and ones that like to make those kind of shakes, right? So you try to get everything in those shakes. But let's just say, right? And that you eat that and consume that within the hours of 4 a.m. and 12 p.m., which means before noon every day, you're stopping the elimination process in its tracks, like the natural elimination process. So really, like, you should be getting most of all of your number twos out, unless you're like, because even still, like, you should be getting a lot of number twos out when you wake up. Like, that should be the first thing that happens, right? After you drink your water, is that you got to go to the restroom number two, and it's ready, like it's on the move, because those are the hours that it should be working that way. So if you are eating dense foods during those hours, what I would recommend is switch to fruits. Okay? All right. Blessed love. Blessed love, Rastafari. Every time we're signing off, it's getting dark, and we are out. Check you later. Thanks for tuning in, by the way.